Go clean something, that's what you're here for. The crystal champagne flute slips from Rebecca Hamilton's manicured fingers, crashing at Alyssa's feet. Shards scatter across Italian marble as conversations halt. Alyssa's tablet screen illuminates her face, revealing not shock or anger, but something far more dangerous. Calculation. The annual charity gala at the Hamilton estate sparkles with wealth and pretension. Chandeliers cast golden light over the $10,000 per plate fundraiser for education, where the ultra-wealthy network between performative displays of generosity. Alyssa Morgan stands out in her tailored navy suit, not because of the 2 master's degrees or PhD in educational policy that brought her here as Executive Director of Education Innovation, but because Rebecca Hamilton has mistaken her for waitstaff. Again. Rebecca, the 45-year-old heiress to Hamilton Financial Group, glides through her family's ballroom in a designer gown worth more than what a teacher makes in 3 months. Her practiced smile never reaches her eyes as she gestures toward Alyssa while whispering to fellow socialite board members. The foundation desperately needs the Hamilton family's support for Alyssa's groundbreaking educational initiative. 3 years of research, pilot programs in underserved communities, and meticulous data collection hang in the balance of tonight's presentation. Alyssa sips water, feeling the subtle vibration of her phone. A text from Marcus. "You okay?" She doesn't respond. At 38, she's navigated harder rooms than this. From teaching in chronically underfunded schools in neighborhoods that wealthy donors only drive through with locked doors, to directing a foundation with $50 million in annual grants, Alyssa Morgan has earned her place at this table through brilliance and persistence. The Hamilton family's influence extends beyond their billions. They control access to a network of donors crucial for scaling Alyssa's initiative nationwide. Tonight, she needs to secure their blessing despite Rebecca's thinly veiled contempt. The weight of responsibility presses against her chest with each breath, not just for her career, but for the students whose futures depend on breaking cycles of educational inequality. Silver trays float through the crowd carried by actual service staff. Hushed whispers follow behind manicured hands. The temperature seems to drop several degrees as James Hamilton enters with his entourage of financial executives. Unlike his wife, James maintains a veneer of approachability, a carefully cultivated public image that has served Hamilton Financial Group well through 2 financial crises. Dr. Morgan. Vera Washington approaches, her elegant gray suit and natural hairstyle projecting the confidence of someone who broke barriers decades ago. At 65, Vera serves as the board's most respected member and was instrumental in recruiting Alyssa. "Are you ready for your presentation?" "Always," Alyssa responds, shoulders straightening imperceptibly. "Remember why we brought you in?" Vera says quietly. "Not despite your background, but because of it. These children need someone who understands both worlds." Alyssa nods, watching Rebecca intercept Marcus as he approaches with presentation materials. Rebecca studies the printouts, directing questions about projected outcomes to Marcus rather than Alyssa. The 3rd time tonight she's bypassed the program's actual architect. "Fascinating approach," Rebecca says to Marcus, though the proposal bears Alyssa's name prominently. "Where did you come up with these metrics?" "Actually," Marcus begins, "Dr. Morgan developed the evaluation framework based on—" "How creative," Rebecca interrupts, never glancing in Alyssa's direction. "We should discuss adjustments before the board review." Alyssa steps forward, tablet in hand. "I'd be happy to walk you through the methodology, Rebecca. The longitudinal data supports—" "Oh, there you are," Rebecca says, as though just noticing Alyssa's presence. "We'll need more champagne for the donor announcement. And could you check on the catering staff? They're falling behind." The room doesn't quite fall silent, but conversations nearby pause. Marcus stiffens. Vera's eyes narrow slightly. Alyssa begins her practiced redirection. "As I was saying, our pilot program data shows significant—" "Go clean something, that's what you're here for," Rebecca cuts in, voice carrying just enough for nearby board members to hear. We'll handle the serious discussions. Will Alyssa continue to tolerate these humiliations for the sake of the children who need her program, or is it time for a different approach? Alyssa kneels, methodically gathering glass fragments from the floor, even as a staff member rushes over with a dustpan. The room watches, uncomfortable, yet unwilling to intervene. She rises slowly, meeting Rebecca's gaze directly for the first time tonight. "You've made a mess, Rebecca," Alyssa says quietly, handing the largest shard to a server. "Not the first time, I suspect." Rebecca's smile falters momentarily before returning with practiced precision. "So helpful. Now, if you'll excuse us, the fundraising committee has actual business to discuss." The confrontation dissipates as quickly as it formed. Donors resume their conversations, the incident already fading from collective memory. Just another uncomfortable moment among the privileged, swiftly swept away like the broken glass. 3 days later, Alyssa stares at her inbox in disbelief. The fundraising committee announcement lists Rebecca Hamilton as newly appointed chairperson, the exact position that will review Alyssa's grant proposal. Marcus leans against her office doorframe, coffee mug gripped too tightly. "How?" Alyssa asks, scrolling through the email again. Her background is in art history. She has zero experience in educational policy. "Her background is in being a Hamilton," Marcus replies. "The family donated the north wing of the Children's Hospital last month. Apparently, that qualifies her to evaluate evidence-based educational interventions." Alyssa closes her laptop, pressing fingers against her temples. She'll bury our proposal. Can Vera intervene? Not without creating bigger problems. The Hamiltons just pledged $30 million to the Foundation's general fund. Nobody's going to challenge Rebecca's appointment. Outside Alyssa's window, rain streaks across glass, distorting the city skyline. 3 years of work, pilot programs in 5 districts, thousands of student outcomes tracked, a model that could genuinely narrow achievement gaps. All potentially derailed because one wealthy woman couldn't be bothered to learn her name. The committee meeting begins precisely at 2 p.m. the following Tuesday. Alyssa presents from the far end of the table while Rebecca presides from the head, scrolling through her phone during critical data points. When Alyssa highlights the 43% improvement in college acceptance rates among program participants, Rebecca finally looks up. "That's very nice, Alyssa. Very inspirational." Her tone suggests she's evaluating a child's art project rather than peer-reviewed research. But real change requires understanding the nuances of influence, something you wouldn't have learned in... Where did you say you went to school again? Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, Vera interjects before Alyssa can respond. Dr. Morgan holds degrees from all 3. Rebecca waves this away. Academia has its place, but practical experience with these communities is what counts. I chaired the Metropolitan Museum's diversity initiative last year. Marcus coughs into his hand, masking what might have been a laugh. Our practical experience is documented in sections 4 through 6, Alyssa responds evenly, directing attention back to her presentation. If you'll turn to page 17, you'll see the community engagement metrics that distinguish our approach. By meeting's end, Rebecca has proposed 3 adjustments to Alyssa's program: reducing focus on systemically underfunded districts, adding a Hamilton Family Center component that would absorb 40% of the budget, and restructuring the leadership team to include a Hamilton Foundation appointee as co-director. In the elevator afterward, Marcus explodes. This is sabotage. She doesn't care about the kids. She wants another photo op and tax write-off. Alyssa remains silent, watching floor numbers descend. You can't seriously consider her changes, Marcus continues. It would gut everything meaningful about the program. I'm considering all options, Alyssa replies carefully. Including letting her win? The elevator doors open to the lobby. Including recognizing that this isn't just about my dignity anymore. Alyssa steps out. It's about documenting a pattern. Will Alyssa allow Rebecca to sabotage years of research just to maintain her family's illusion of superiority? 2 weeks later, Alyssa receives an invitation that makes her stomach tighten. Donor dinner at Hamilton Mansion. Attendance mandatory for program consideration. The email specifies business attire and includes a +1 option. Alyssa forwards it to Marcus with only battle gear required. The Hamilton estate sprawls across 30 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. Alyssa and Marcus arrive precisely on time, navigating the circular driveway where Bentleys and Maseratis gleam under architectural lighting. Inside, staff direct them to the East Salon, a room larger than Alyssa's entire apartment. Dr. Morgan, Mr. Chen? James Hamilton greets them with practiced warmth. Unlike his wife, he at least pretends interest in their work. Rebecca speaks highly of your dedication. Alyssa maintains her professional smile, knowing full well what Rebecca actually says when James isn't listening. We appreciate the Hamilton Foundation's consideration of our initiative. James, Rebecca glides over, air-kissing her husband before acknowledging their presence. I see our education team has arrived. She links her arm through Alyssa's without permission, steering her toward a cluster of wealthy donors. Let me introduce you to everyone. This is Alyssa Morgan, our diversity hire with some interesting ideas about urban education. Alyssa feels her pulse quicken, but keeps her expression neutral. The mental calculation runs automatically. Confrontation now risks alienating 12 potential 7-figure donors. The children who would benefit from her program cannot afford her indignation at this moment. Dr. Morgan, she corrects gently, extending her hand to the nearest donor. My team has developed an evidence-based intervention that's already showing promising results in pilot districts. Throughout dinner, Rebecca ensures Alyssa is seated far from the influential guests, between an elderly trustee who sleeps through most courses and a trophy wife more interested in her phone than education policy. When coffee is served, Alyssa notices her cup, a chipped mug, noticeably different from the fine china provided to other guests. Marcus catches her eye from across the table, raising an eyebrow. Alyssa gives a nearly imperceptible head shake. Not yet. Later, as guests migrate to various conversation clusters, Alyssa analyzes the room's dynamics. She's always had a gift for pattern recognition. It's what made her doctoral research on educational outcome disparities so compelling. She sees how Rebecca positions herself between Alyssa and any donor who shows genuine interest in the program. She notes which board members defer to the Hamiltons and which maintain independent judgment. Most importantly, she observes how James Hamilton watches his wife with increasing discomfort throughout the evening. Your proposal has merit, a voice says beside her. Martin Whitfield, billionaire tech founder turned philanthropist, has somehow escaped Rebecca's gatekeeping. Particularly your emphasis on measuring outcomes beyond standardized testing. Thank you, Alyssa responds, seizing the opportunity. Our longitudinal data suggests traditional metrics miss critical indicators of program success. I'd be interested in seeing those metrics. Whitfield hands her his card. My foundation might have complementary interests. I'm sure Alyssa would love to send you some reading material. Rebecca materializes between them. But Martin, you simply must meet James's new investment director. He's revolutionizing our approach to education funding. As Rebecca leads Whitfield away, he glances back at Alyssa with a puzzled expression. She commits his email address to memory before Rebecca can confiscate his card. Will Alyssa confront Rebecca's sabotage now, or is she gathering ammunition for a more strategic moment? The final presentation before the board vote looms 3 weeks later. Everything Alyssa has worked for comes down to this meeting. The culmination of research, pilot programs, and community engagement that could transform educational outcomes for thousands of students. Alyssa arrives early to set up, Marcus beside her testing the presentation system. Board members filter in, taking their assigned seats. The Hamiltons enter last, Rebecca radiant in a crimson suit that matches the foundation's logo, James distracted by his phone. Technical difficulties? Rebecca asks, noting Alyssa's furrowed brow as the presentation fails to load properly on the main screen. "Nothing serious," Alyssa responds, though she had tested everything yesterday without issues. "Don't worry," Rebecca says, voice dripping with false concern. "I took the liberty of preparing a backup. We can use my version while your team sorts out the problems." Before Alyssa can object, Rebecca distributes printed presentations, an altered version of Alyssa's work with critical data points modified and emphasis shifted to components that would primarily benefit Hamilton-adjacent organizations. Alyssa watches board members review pages where her carefully constructed evidence has been selectively edited. On page 7, success metrics for predominantly Black and Hispanic schools have disappeared entirely. On page 12, budget allocations have shifted from direct student services to administrative partnerships with organizations that, Alyssa suspects, funnel back to Hamilton interests. "As you'll see," Rebecca begins, standing to address the room while Alyssa continues troubleshooting the technology, "the proposed initiative has promise, but requires significant restructuring to align with foundation priorities." Alyssa watches Rebecca systematically dismantling 3 years of work, presenting incorrect conclusions drawn from manipulated data. Board members nod, unaware they're seeing a funhouse mirror version of her research. Vera catches Alyssa's eye, her expression questioning why Alyssa remains silent. What the room doesn't see is Alyssa's tablet under the table, recording timestamp after timestamp of specific claims, cross-referenced against her original documentation. This isn't just about Rebecca's casual racism anymore. It's about deliberate misrepresentation of research to divert resources from communities that need them most. Will Alyssa allow Rebecca's manipulation to divert millions from the children who need it most? Or is it time to unveil what she's been documenting all along? Alyssa's apartment feels too small tonight. Data spreads across every surface. Printouts, sticky notes, and 3 monitors displaying different aspects of the Hamilton family's philanthropic history. Outside, raindrops tap against windows like impatient fingers while city lights blur through the streaked glass. She stands before her evidence wall, arms crossed tightly across her chest. What began as self-protection, documenting Rebecca's microaggressions to maintain her own sanity, has evolved into something far more significant. Pattern recognition has always been Alyssa's specialty, and the pattern here is unmistakable. The Hamilton Foundation's last 6 major initiatives all began with programs designed by Black or Hispanic professionals. Each ended with resources redirected to predominantly white institutions or Hamilton-adjacent organizations. The original architects were systematically sidelined, their research repackaged under Hamilton branding. Alyssa traces a timeline with her fingertip. 5 foundation executives in 7 years, all from underrepresented backgrounds, all departed after challenging Rebecca's adjustments to their programs. Her phone vibrates with Vera's 3rd call today. Alyssa finally answers. "I've been worried," Vera says without preamble. "You disappeared after the presentation. I needed to verify some information. Rebecca's manipulation was blatant. The board saw it." "Did they?" Alyssa asks. "Because they still gave her provisional approval to restructure my program." Silence stretches between them before Vera sighs. "The Hamiltons just pledged another $50 million to the endowment. Nobody wants to challenge them directly. So we sacrificed the students to keep the donors happy." Alyssa's voice remains level, but her free hand forms a fist. "How many times have we made that bargain, Vera? You know it's not that simple. It never is." Alyssa glances at her wall of evidence. "Why did you recruit me, specifically?" Vera's response comes slowly. "Because you understand both worlds. You can translate between them. And if those worlds are fundamentally incompatible, if one systematically exploits the other while claiming to help, the Hamiltons have influence beyond just money," Vera warns. "They've destroyed careers over less. James still believes in your work, but Rebecca has his ear. Tread carefully." After hanging up, Alyssa sits motionless in the dark, The weight of responsibility presses down, not just for her career, but for every student who would benefit from her program. For their futures, she's tolerated Rebecca's behavior, swallowed her pride, played the long game. But at what point does strategic patience become complicity? On her desk sits a worn photograph in a simple frame, Alyssa with her first class of students in South Chicago. Their faces beam with possibility despite a classroom with peeling paint and outdated textbooks. 8 years later, against tremendous odds, 17 of those 23 students graduated college. They didn't need saviors. They needed resources and advocates who refused to abandon them. Alyssa picks up the photo, its familiar weight anchoring her to her purpose. "I promised I wouldn't become part of the problem," she whispers to their faces. Her laptop screen illuminates with a new email, Rebecca requesting additional adjustments before final approval. The proposed changes would gut the program's accountability metrics and community oversight components, essentially converting it into a Hamilton vanity project while maintaining just enough of Alyssa's framework to claim legitimacy. With deliberate calm, Alyssa opens a secure folder labeled Hamilton Foundation Audit. Inside lie hundreds of documented interactions, financial analyses, and pattern recognitions from 3 years of careful observation. She's approaching this like the academic she is, methodically gathering evidence, cross-referencing sources, building an irrefutable case. What Rebecca never bothered to learn was that Alyssa's doctoral research included a fellowship with the Financial Forensics Initiative, analyzing how educational funding actually flows through systems versus how it's reported publicly. She can follow money trails that others miss, identifying how resources intended for marginalized communities often end up elsewhere. Alyssa reaches for her grandmother's journal, tucked between research texts on her bookshelf. Elaine Morgan had worked as a housekeeper for the Whitfield family for 36 years, witnessing firsthand how wealth maintained itself through carefully constructed systems. "Always keep records," she had told Alyssa during undergraduate summers when Alyssa would help with cleaning the Whitfield estate. "Your word against theirs will never be enough, but paper has patience. Data doesn't lie." Flipping through her grandmother's meticulous notes, dates, times, conversations overheard, promises made and broken, Alyssa recognizes where her own methodical nature originated. Elaine had documented wage discrepancies, verbal abuses, stolen ideas presented to dinner guests as original thoughts. Never confrontational, always watching, always recording. The difference is that Elaine never had the opportunity to use her records. Alyssa does. She begins organizing her documentation into a cohesive narrative, focusing not on Rebecca's personal slights, but on the systematic pattern of resource diversion. Her fingers pause over the keyboard as she contemplates the consequences. The Hamiltons' influence extends throughout philanthropy, finance, and politics. Taking them on means potential professional suicide. But allowing Rebecca to dismantle her program means betraying the communities she's promised to serve. It means becoming another well-educated professional who chose comfort over justice. "They think I'm just an educator," Alyssa murmurs, resuming her work. "They've never bothered to ask what I actually studied." By morning, Alyssa has compiled her evidence into an airtight presentation. The story told through data is damning. Systematic appropriation of intellectual labor, consistent redirection of resources away from intended communities, and tax benefits far exceeding actual charitable impact. She sits back, exhausted but resolute. The next move requires perfect strategic precision. Direct confrontation would allow Rebecca to discredit her as disgruntled or emotional. Public accusation without proper context would be dismissed as ingratitude. Alyssa needs a forum where the Hamiltons cannot control the narrative, witnesses who understand the significance of the evidence, and timing that prevents immediate retaliation. Her gaze falls on an invitation she'd previously ignored, the National Education Philanthropy Conference 3 weeks away. The Hamiltons are scheduled to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award for their unwavering commitment to educational equity. The perfect stage has already been set. Alyssa reaches for her phone, dialing a number she rarely uses. Martin? It's Alyssa Morgan. I'd like to discuss your interest in educational outcome metrics, and I have a rather significant favor to ask. The children deserving these opportunities can't afford to wait for the wealthy to find their conscience. Sometimes justice requires strategic precision. The preparations consume every moment outside Alyssa's official duties. She works with surgical precision, building a coalition of allies while maintaining a facade of resigned acceptance toward Rebecca's improvements to her program. Martin Whitfield proves an unexpected asset. The tech billionaire had recognized the inconsistencies in Rebecca's presentation immediately, but needed hard evidence before acting. The philanthropy world runs on relationships, he explains during their third planning session in his downtown office. Accusations without ironclad proof get dismissed as professional jealousy. I have the proof, Alyssa assures him, sliding a thumb drive across his desk. 3 years of documentation, financial analysis, and pattern recognition. Across the city, similar conversations unfold with carefully selected allies. Education advocates who've seen their own programs gutted by performative philanthropy. Financial experts who recognize the tax-sheltering patterns in Hamilton giving. Community leaders whose students were promised resources that never materialized. Why now? Asks Jasmine Reynolds, director of a Southside education initiative that lost funding after challenging Hamilton Foundation oversight. You're risking everything. Because the pattern is accelerating, Alyssa responds. 10 years ago, the Hamiltons funded 3 community-led programs annually. Last year, 0. Meanwhile, their tax deductions for charitable giving have tripled. Industrial printers hum through the night in Martin's office, producing bound reports with executive summaries, data visualizations, and sourced evidence. Alyssa reviews each page, ensuring every claim meets the highest academic standards. This isn't about personal vindication. It's about systematic accountability. The Hamiltons will retaliate, warns Marcus, helping organize the documentation chronologically. They've destroyed people for less. That's why timing and venue are critical, Alyssa responds, annotating a particularly damning graph showing the divergence between reported and actual community impact. Public revelation with the right witnesses present creates a shield. Once the information exists in the public sphere, attacking me only validates the claims. The night before the conference, Alyssa sits alone in her apartment, feeling the weight of fresh paper and expertly bound reports. The smell of ink and binding glue fills the room. Tomorrow will permanently alter her professional trajectory, either establishing her as a principled reformer or ending her career in institutional philanthropy. Her phone chimes with a text from her grandmother. Remember who you are and why you started. Elaine Morgan, now 83, remains Alyssa's moral compass. The woman who cleaned wealthy homes by day while pursuing her associate's degree by night, who taught Alyssa that education without integrity is merely sophisticated privilege. The National Education Philanthropy Conference sprawls across Chicago's largest convention center. Corporate logos compete with university shields on banners suspended from 30-foot ceilings. Foundation executives network in the main hall while actual educators attend panels in smaller side rooms, the hierarchy of influence visible in the very architecture of the event. Alyssa arrives early, wearing her most authoritative suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, a deliberate choice projecting seriousness without appearing confrontational. She wheels a small suitcase containing 50 copies of her report, each sealed with a simple label. Hamilton Foundation, Pattern Analysis, 2022-2025. The conference agenda places the Hamilton Family Honor Ceremony as the centerpiece of Day 2, a 90-minute celebration of their transformative impact on educational equity, followed by Rebecca's keynote address on authentic community partnership. Alyssa's name appears in small print, introducing Rebecca as program partner and foundation executive. By design, no one expects what comes next. The ceremony room fills beyond capacity. Education journalists crowd the media section. Foundation executives occupy front rows while program directors and community representatives find seats where available. On stage, a table displays the Crystal Award waiting to be presented, catching light from overhead spots. James and Rebecca Hamilton enter to polite applause, Rebecca resplendent in a designer suit the exact shade of the Foundation's branded blue. James nods acknowledgments while Rebecca scans the crowd, her practiced smile never wavering. Neither notices Alyssa seated quietly near the stage, nor the strategic positioning of her allies throughout the audience. The Foundation chairman offers a glowing introduction, highlighting the Hamiltons' unparalleled generosity and visionary leadership. Statistical claims float through his speech: millions donated, thousands of students impacted, dozens of communities transformed, each number cataloged in Alyssa's mental database of misrepresentations. And now, the chairman concludes, to introduce our honorees, we welcome Dr. Alyssa Morgan, Executive Director of Education Innovation and partner in the Hamilton Foundation's newest initiative. Rebecca's smile flickers momentarily. This was supposed to be a perfunctory introduction, not a featured speaking role. Alyssa approaches the podium with measured steps, tablet in hand, expression professionally neutral. "Thank you for this opportunity," she begins, voice calm but carrying to every corner of the suddenly hushed room. The Hamilton family's influence on educational philanthropy is indeed worthy of examination. She taps her tablet, and the large screens flanking the stage display a single slide. Following the money, promise versus practice in educational philanthropy. Rebecca shifts in her seat. James leans forward slightly. "Philanthropy requires trust," Alyssa continues. "Donors trust foundations to use their contributions effectively. Communities trust that promised resources will actually reach them. Students trust that programs created for their benefit actually prioritize their needs." Another tap changes the slide to a simple question. What happens when that trust is systematically violated? The room's atmosphere transforms from celebratory to confused. Rebecca's smile remains fixed while her eyes dart to the Foundation chairman, who appears equally bewildered by this unexpected deviation. For 3 years, I've had the unique opportunity to observe Hamilton Foundation operations from within. As an educational researcher specializing in outcome analysis, I applied the same methodological rigor to tracking foundation activities that I bring to program evaluation. Alyssa advances through slides showing stark disparities between reported Hamilton Foundation impacts and documented realities. Maps reveal how resources consistently flow away from predominantly Black and Hispanic communities, despite public claims to the contrary. Financial charts demonstrate how the Hamilton family receives tax benefits approximately 340% greater than the actual community impact of their giving. The data tells a consistent story, Alyssa states, voice gaining strength without losing composure. Programs designed by and for underrepresented communities are systematically undermined, their resources redirected, their architects sidelined or removed entirely. Rebecca stands abruptly, approaching the stage with practiced poise that barely conceals her fury. "This is hardly the appropriate forum for—" "I'm not here to clean glasses," Alyssa interrupts, her voice cutting through the tension. "I'm here to clear the fog of your deception." The phrase lands like a physical blow. Gasps ripple through the audience as people recognize the reference to Rebecca's dismissal of Alyssa. Rebecca freezes mid-step, suddenly aware that her private behavior has become unexpectedly public. Before Rebecca can recover, the screens display video testimonials from community leaders describing promised Hamilton resources that never materialized. Former Foundation employees share experiences of having their work appropriated and rebranded. Financial experts explain how the Foundation's structure maximizes tax benefits while minimizing accountability. Phones emerge throughout the audience, recording the unfolding revelation. Journalists type furiously on laptops. Rebecca's attempts to interrupt are met with calls to let her finish from multiple sections of the room. This isn't about personality conflicts or individual behaviors, Alyssa clarifies, maintaining academic precision. This is about systematic exploitation disguised as generosity. It's about resources promised to vulnerable communities being redirected to maintain existing power structures. She gestures to assistants who begin distributing bound reports to media representatives and key stakeholders. The complete analysis, with full sourcing and methodology, is available for your review. Every claim is documented, every conclusion supported by evidence. Rebecca finally reaches the stage, attempting to take control of the microphone. "This is a complete misrepresentation of our work," she begins, voice tight with controlled rage. "Is it?" Alyssa asks simply, bringing up a slide showing Rebecca's own email directing resources away from a Southside Chicago initiative toward a program at her alma mater's already well-funded education department. "The evidence suggests otherwise." Rebecca turns to the audience, seeking allies among the wealthy donors and foundation executives who've always supported the Hamilton family. But uncertainty has replaced automatic deference in their expressions. The hard data on display challenges the comfortable narrative they've accepted for years. Complete silence fills the massive room as the final slides reveal the cumulative impact. Millions in promised support that never reached intended communities, dozens of programs gutted or redirected, and a consistent pattern of appropriating intellectual labor from professionals of color. James Hamilton rises slowly from his seat, face unreadable as he approaches the stage. The room tenses, anticipating either explosive anger or forceful denial. Rebecca steps aside, clearly expecting her husband to defend their legacy and discredit Alyssa's presentation. Instead, James takes the microphone with unexpected composure. "I would like to thank Dr. Morgan for her thoroughness," he says after a long pause. "It appears there are significant discrepancies between our foundation's stated mission and its practical implementation that require immediate attention." Rebecca's expression transforms from confident expectation to stunned disbelief. "I was not aware of many of these specific instances," James continues, addressing the audience directly. "But ignorance is not an excuse when one's name is attached to promises made to communities in need." The frozen moment extends as everyone processes this unexpected response. Rebecca remains motionless, her carefully constructed world visibly crumbling around her. Journalists continue recording every word, every reaction. Will this moment of truth lead to real change, or just another wealthy family's performative apology? By midnight, video clips from Alyssa's presentation dominate social media. Hamilton. Exposed trends nationally alongside #philanthropy accountability. Major news outlets request interviews, educational forums share the report, and foundation boards across the country call emergency meetings to review their own practices. Alyssa's phone hasn't stopped vibrating since she left the convention center. She silences it while sitting in her apartment's small kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that's long gone cold. The adrenaline that carried her through the presentation has faded, leaving bone-deep exhaustion and the surreal awareness that her professional life has irreversibly changed. Marcus arrives with takeout neither of them will probably eat. "You've started something," he says, setting containers on the counter. "The Chronicle of Philanthropy wants an exclusive. The Washington Post is investigating similar patterns at 3 other major foundations. Harvard's Center for Nonprofit Organizations is citing your methodology." "And the Hamiltons?" Alyssa asks quietly. "James has called an emergency board meeting. Rebecca hasn't made any public statements." Marcus pauses. "Vera texted that the foundation's legal team is in crisis mode, not discussing litigation, discussing compliance and restructuring." Alyssa nods, processing this unexpected development. She had prepared for immediate retaliation, not introspection. "You took an enormous risk," Marcus continues, leaning against the counter. "Most people in your position would have either quit or compromised. Most people in my position never had the chance to present unfiltered research, Alyssa corrects him. The difference wasn't courage, it was having the right allies and the right forum. Her phone lights up with her grandmother's name. Alyssa answers immediately. I saw you on the news, Elaine says without preamble, her voice carrying decades of hard-won wisdom. You spoke truth to power without losing your dignity. That's a rare thing. I learned from the best, Alyssa responds, feeling tears threaten for the first time today. I kept records, just like you taught me. The difference is you had somewhere to take them. Pride resonates in Elaine's voice. When you were little, I worried that straddling both worlds would break your heart. Instead, it gave you vision. After hanging up, Alyssa finally allows herself to cry, not from fear or stress, but from the release of carrying this burden alone for so long. When the tears subside, she sleeps for 14 uninterrupted hours. The Foundation's official response comes 3 days later, following marathon closed-door sessions with the board of directors. James Hamilton personally delivers a public statement that sends further shockwaves through philanthropic circles. After thorough review of Dr. Morgan's research, we acknowledge significant failures in our Foundation's implementation of its stated mission. Effective immediately, Rebecca Hamilton has resigned from all Foundation positions and charitable boards. We are establishing an independent oversight committee comprising community representatives to review all existing programs and ensure resources reach their intended recipients. The statement continues with specific commitments. Third-party audits of all Hamilton charitable giving over the past decade. Restitution to communities promised resources that were redirected, and a complete restructuring of the Foundation's governance to include leadership from the communities it claims to serve. What surprises Alyssa most is the absence of qualifying language, no misunderstandings or differences in vision. The accountability is unambiguous, the admissions specific and detailed. The emergency board meeting convenes the following Monday. Alyssa arrives to find the Foundation's atmosphere transformed. Staff who previously avoided eye contact now approach with quiet congratulations. The boardroom configuration has changed, the intimidating executive table replaced by a circular arrangement suggesting equality rather than hierarchy. Vera meets her outside the boardroom, expression both proud and concerned. You've changed this organization permanently, she says quietly. James has been asking questions about everything, funding allocations, hiring practices, program evaluations. It's as though he's truly seeing the Foundation's operations for the first time. And Rebecca? Gone. Reportedly in the Hamptons while her publicist crafts a redemption narrative. Vera's eyes reflect decades of witnessing similar patterns. But the story has moved beyond her personal behavior to systemic issues across philanthropy. That's the real victory. Inside, James Hamilton stands as Alyssa enters. Gone is the distant financial titan, replaced by someone visibly humbled. Dr. Morgan, he begins, I owe you and many others an apology. I allowed myself to remain ignorant of operations bearing my family's name. That ignorance enabled harm to communities we claimed to support. The board meeting proceeds with unprecedented transparency. James announces Alyssa's original educational initiative will receive full funding with its community accountability measures intact. Additionally, a comprehensive review of all Foundation practices will begin immediately, with Alyssa invited to help design the evaluation framework. We need to rebuild trust, James acknowledges to the assembled board, not through promises, but through demonstrable changes to how resources flow and decisions are made. After the meeting, Alyssa and Marcus stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Far below, traffic moves in organized patterns, each vehicle following established rules to reach its destination. They never see you coming when they're too busy looking down, Alyssa observes quietly. Marcus studies her expression. You don't seem as satisfied as I expected. Systemic change isn't about individual victories, she responds. One foundation's restructuring doesn't address the larger problem, but it's a start, documentation that creates a blueprint others can follow. That evening, alone in her apartment, Alyssa finally allows herself to examine the photos of students who will benefit from her now secured program. Children in chronically underfunded schools who will receive resources previously reserved for institutions already flush with advantages. Communities who will maintain oversight of programs designed for their specific needs rather than having solutions imposed from above. For the first time in 3 years, she doesn't need to calculate how each word, each action might impact their chances. The weight lifts gradually, like a tide receding, leaving her lighter than she's felt since accepting the foundation position. Her tablet chimes with an email from Martin Whitfield. Your methodology is creating ripples. 3 other major foundations have announced internal reviews of their giving practices. This isn't just about the Hamiltons anymore. It's about accountability across philanthropy. When you're ready, we should discuss next steps. Alyssa closes her eyes, feeling the culmination of years of careful documentation, strategic patience, and precise action. The confrontation was necessary not for personal vindication, but because the students deserved advocates who refused to be sidelined or silenced. She opens her laptop and begins outlining a framework for authentic philanthropic accountability, one that centers community voices, demands transparency in resource allocation, and measures impact through meaningful outcomes rather than tax benefits or public relations opportunities. The work continues, but tonight, she has won them time and space to build something better. 6 months later, Alyssa stands before a different audience in a community center filled beyond capacity. Gone are the crystal chandeliers and designer suits. Instead, teachers, parents, students, and community organizers fill every seat, their attention focused on the data displayed behind her. The results speak for themselves, Alyssa explains, highlighting outcomes from the first quarter of the newly implemented program. College acceptance rates up 27%, teacher retention improved 32%, parent involvement increased 46%. Most importantly, students report 58% higher confidence in their educational futures. The presentation continues with community leaders sharing their experiences of genuine partnership rather than performative inclusion. A high school senior describes how the program's mentorship component helped her secure a full scholarship to Northwestern. A veteran teacher explains how new resources have transformed his ability to meet diverse learning needs. What no one mentions is the seismic shift that made this possible, the confrontation that exposed decades of philanthropic misdirection and created space for authentic community-centered work. James Hamilton sits quietly in the back row, his presence no longer commanding automatic deference, but indicating genuine commitment to learning. Since the restructuring, he has attended every community feedback session, asking questions and actually listening to answers. The Hamilton Foundation has transformed under new leadership, a diverse board comprising education experts and community representatives, with James serving as a regular member rather than chair. Every funding decision requires verification that resources reach intended recipients, with impact measured by community-defined metrics rather than donor priorities. More significantly, Alyssa now leads a coalition of education advocates implementing similar accountability structures across philanthropy. What began as documentation of one foundation's failures has evolved into a movement for transparent giving, with major donors nationwide being held to new standards of verifiable impact. After the presentation, Alyssa addresses a group of young education professionals beginning their own careers in advocacy and system change. True power isn't in wealth, but in truth strategically wielded for justice, she tells them, voice steady with hard-won conviction. Document everything, build coalitions, choose your moment carefully, and never forget who you're actually fighting for. She gestures towards students demonstrating projects developed through newly funded programs. These young people don't need saviors with checkbooks. They need advocates who refuse to accept the status quo, who demand that resources match promises, who hold power accountable. The session concludes with experienced advocates sharing strategies for recognizing and documenting systematic discrimination within institutions. They discuss identifying patterns rather than isolated incidents, building networks of allied witnesses, and choosing strategic moments for maximum impact. What happened with the Hamilton Foundation isn't unique, Alyssa explains. Similar dynamics exist throughout systems that claim to serve communities while primarily protecting existing power structures. Your responsibility is to recognize these patterns, document them methodically, and challenge them strategically. Later, as participants network over refreshments, the room buzzes with energy and purpose. Conversations focus on specific strategies for institutional accountability and community-centered design. New coalitions form between veteran advocates and emerging voices, bridging generations of experience in system change. Alyssa watches from the sidelines, feeling the subtle vibration of her phone with messages from similar gatherings across the country. The applause that matters most isn't for her personally, but for the methodology she developed, a framework for transforming righteous anger into strategic action. Did this story resonate with your experiences? Have you witnessed similar dynamics in your workplace or community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone else recognize patterns they're facing. If you believe in the power of strategic accountability and stories that reveal how real change happens, hit that subscribe button and join our Beat Stories community. Each week, we bring you authentic narratives of people who refused to accept the status quo and found innovative ways to challenge broken systems. Don't forget to like this video and hit the notification bell so you never miss our new releases. At Beat Stories, we don't just tell tales of injustice, we reveal the brilliant strategies that transform individual courage into lasting change.
What happened today isn't just a story, it's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.